Last month, we told you about the federal charges that were brought up against former Blackwater officials, charges that accuse the group of conspiring to hide the purchases of automatic rifles and other weapons from the government. Now, of the 5 former Blackwater officials, former General Counsel Andrew Howell, former Procurement Vice President Anna Bundy, and former Weapons Manager Ronald Slezak walked away scot-free. Meanwhile, former President Gary Jackson and former Executive Vice President William Matthews pled guilty to some misdemeanor charges. They were sentenced to 4 months of house arrest, 3 years of probation, and a $5,000 fine. But new information is emerging showing that just how tight the relations are between this private security contractor and the CIA. It was, after all, the argument defense attorneys used to excuse the group's behavior to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. But is this a valid excuse to write off a group's illegal procurement of weapons? To discuss, Michael O'Brien, author of America's Failure in Iraq, joins me now. Thank you for joining me. So how close were these relations between Blackwater and the CIA?
We probably will never know, but the whole trial that collapsed a month ago, just all it does is raise more questions.
And that's what go ahead.
Yeah, the fact is, you know, I'm very, very familiar with government procurement. Now, of course, the CIA does a lot of stuff, black stuff, that, you know, is unique. I've never done contracting with or for the CIA, but I am familiar with government contracting. And the whole thing about it is, if Blackwater is saying that we were working for the CIA, they've got to have something to back it up. Verbal doesn't fly. If they say, you know, if there's a verbal agreement, that doesn't hold water. Maybe they had one, but it's not going to good enough to defend them. If they had some kind of agreement, there should have been something in writing that between procurement at the CIA, because the CIA has contracting officers that procure for goods and services, just like any other federal agency. So it would seem to me that they would have had something in writing that if they're providing all this other information, redacted documents and stuff like that, they would have had some kind of contractual contract paperwork to provide as part of their defense. The news stated that a couple of very high-ranking CIA officials spoke on their, you know, in a document, wrote on their behalf, probably trying to help their defense. But the thing that really would have defended them and would have backed up their argument would have said, well, where's the contract? You know, where's the document that says you were under contract to the CIA?
That was, of course, after the fact and not before.
Exactly.
So let me ask you this. First of all, should it be that surprising that they did have these close ties, allegedly? And also, do you think that the newly rebranded Academy has these kind of close ties with the CIA?
Well, they probably do. It's probably not a unique arrangement. The CIA has all sorts of people under contract. It's incredible the number of contractors that work for the federal government. But one of the things that I read in one of the articles was that their claim is that the former Congressman Hoekstra said, well, the CIA needed Blackwater at the time. That was its name at the time, because they didn't have the resources to do the job themselves. That's really the main problem. The problem is, why doesn't the CIA have the resources or the operatives that have the experience and the know-how and all that to do the job? We're outsourcing to civilians to be operatives for the CIA. It just sounds kind of, and the same thing's happening in the military with companies like Blackwater. We're outsourcing soldiers, the job of soldiers. So the problem is the government is outsourcing for everything, and in this particular case, if Blackwater's story is to be believed, they were outsourcing to Blackwater to do all sorts of stuff, and they got caught.
And it's surprising that they say that they didn't have the resources, considering just how much of our budget actually goes to the Department of Defense and others. Let me ask you this. Does the fact that these two had close relations excuse the fact that they were possibly buying these guns under without the Bureau of Firearm, Tobacco, and Alcohol actually knowing?
Well, you know, that's a tough one. Who the heck knows? They probably. It seems to me, and it's just my personal opinion, it seems to me that, you know, Blackwater's kind of a rogue outfit. They're doing all sorts of stuff, and they're probably crossing the line on a lot of stuff. The actual, I mean, a handful of weapons, you know, 3 pistols given to Prince Abdullah of Jordan. I mean, in the scale of things, it's not a lot. It's like our interview that when I was here last month. You know, it's kind of like a slap on the wrist. It's like the government wanted to have something to go after Blackwater on. But I really think it's just the tip of the iceberg. I just think there's so many things. The massacre in Baghdad, you know, the Nisr Square massacre in September of '07, dwarfs this raid in North Carolina. I mean, that's the big enchilada right there.
Well, let me quickly ask you, we have a very short amount of time left, but it's important to note that it's not just Americans that work within these companies. Private contractors like Academy have employers around the world, and it's not just coalition allies. So how can we hold these people accountable, or can we?
Well, here's the thing. It says in this one article that I read, Eric Prince, you know, is just involved. But everything he does is for other countries. All that Eric Prince is doing right now is contracting out for services, security services and all that, mercenary services, to other countries. So again, I think the big question with Blackwater, Z, now called Academy, is it okay for an American and an American firm under another name or whatever to be contracting out mercenary services to foreign countries? I think that's the big question when it comes to Academy, Z, Blackwater, and all these others that are run by Americans or actually American firms.
And I have a feeling we're not going to get the answer to that question anytime soon.
Anytime soon.
Michael O'Brien, author of America's Failure in Iraq, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me.